Okay, let's call this meeting to order. The County Board, today is Thursday, June 18th, 2009. Time is 7:02. Roll call, please.
Dennett's.
Here.
Gladney. Hunt.
Here.
James.
Here.
Jay.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Knott.
Here.
Kurtz.
Here.
Langenheim.
Here.
McGinty. Mosier. Nudo.
Here.
O'Connor.
Here.
Richards.
Here.
Rosales.
Here.
Sapp.
Here.
Schrader.
Here.
Smucker.
Here.
Wysocki.
Here.
Ammons.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Beckett.
Here.
Benzel.
Here.
Betts.
Here.
Carter. Coert. And Weibel.
Here, we have a quorum. Instead of a prayer tonight, I want to point out that death of a couple people lately. First of all, recently Jim Shields, the son of Lyle Shields, who's a former county board chair and who's just the room is named after, passed away. And also Jean Marie Brigham Wild passed away recently. She was on the county board from 1972 to 1978. And apparently she also ran for the mayor in Urbana in 1969. Do we have a moment of silence for these two people, please? Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk read the notice of the meeting?
Notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the County Board, Champaign County, Illinois, will convene on June 18, 2009, 7 o'clock p.m. in the Lyle Shields Meeting Room, Brookings Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, in said county for the purpose of allowing and ordering payments of claims against the county, receiving and acting upon reports of committees and such other matters as may be brought before said meeting, which said meeting shall continue in session from day to day until the completion of said business.
Move adoption.
Moved by Mr. Betts, second by Ms. Amons. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Seek approval of the minutes of May 21st, 2009.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. James. Second by Mr. Benzel. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Seek approval of the agenda. Moved by Ms. Amons, second by Ms. Coert. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. The date and time of our next regular meeting is Thursday, July 23rd, 2009 at 7 p.m. I also note that all of the committee meetings have been canceled for next month. Public participation. Ms. Jane Quinlan.
My name is Jane Quinlan. I'm Regional Superintendent of Schools for Champaign and Ford counties. I feel a little bit like the warm-up act this evening. The district superintendents who are here will answer your specific questions later while I address some general matters related to the sales tax for school facilities during public participation. First of all, I want to thank you for the time and consideration that you have given this issue. The implementation of the county sales tax for school facilities requires action by both local school boards and the county board. This requirement for action by multiple elected boards has created some awkwardness and frustration on the parts of both sides. The county board is the only elected body with authority to impose this county tax. The local school boards have responsibility for the use of these funds and as a result are interested and involved in the issue. I appreciate the county board's role in this process, and the superintendents and their boards have respectfully responded to your requests for property tax abatement and their plans for the use of this revenue. All of the districts with outstanding construction bonds have agreed to abate property taxes. Prior to the April 7th election, the boards of these districts publicly committed to their communities and to the residents of the county that they would reduce property taxes if a 1% county sales tax for facilities was approved by the voters and imposed by the county board. At the county board's request, the school boards in these districts passed resolutions after the April 7th election, reaffirming their commitment to abate taxes. These resolutions were distributed at the Policy, Personnel, and Appointments Committee meeting on June 3rd. Some members expressed concerns that the language of the resolutions did not exactly match the statements in brochures distributed by districts prior to the election. In order to clarify this, districts have either submitted letters, which you have been distributed to you, or spoken directly with county board members to explain any differences. I believe that the superintendents and their boards have demonstrated their commitment to use this new revenue source to reduce property taxes, and have detailed how they will use any remaining funds for building, remodeling, and upgrades, or for new construction. In addition to the elected board's commitments, the law restricts the use of the sales tax revenue to school facility purposes. Districts can only use these funds to pay for capital projects, to retire existing debt that was issued for capital purposes, and to leverage the revenue for bonds for new capital needs. In conclusion, I urge you to adopt the motion imposing the full 1% sales tax that was approved by the voters of Champaign County on April 7th. I appreciate the county board's consideration of this issue and respect the role that you play in the implementation of the sales tax. I believe that the superintendents and their boards have worked to answer your questions and to address your concerns, and their attendance this evening again demonstrates their willingness to work with the county board on this issue. Thank you.
Ms. Diana Visick.
I'm Diana Visick, Chair of the Champaign County Libertarian Party, and deeply interested in open government. I'm here tonight to talk about a clause in the proposed county administrator's contract which I feel will hinder good government. Before I begin, let me make clear that my remarks have nothing to do with Deb Busey personally. I've known her for many years and respect her highly. The clause in question has more to do with the county board than with Ms. Busey herself. This clause is part of Section 5C, which pertains to performance evaluation. The previous contract from May of 2004 says, quote, "If the county board has reason to discipline the employee, it shall be done in a manner that will not embarrass the employee before other employees or the public," unquote. While it sounds reasonable on the surface, in practice it has been used to stifle discussion of important county issues, such as how the moldy wood came to be installed in the new nursing home. The clause ostensibly is in the contract to protect the employee, but has the effect of protecting powerful board members who may have directed the employee to do something. Everyone is so afraid that their remarks will be interpreted as criticism of the employee that discussion of problems is forced into closed session or not discussed at all. In the proposed contract before you this evening, the wording has been narrowed even further. Section 5C now says, quote, "Public comment regarding the employee's performance should not be made by any board member outside of the context of the process defined in this section," unquote. If taken literally, no one could say that Deb Busey is doing a great job and we're lucky to have her. Section 5C goes on to say, quote, "If the employee is publicly criticized by any board member, The employee shall have the right to request corrective action and to be made whole under the grievance process as defined in Chapter 6 of the Champaign County Personnel Policy. This condition is too broad. The county administrator will now be responsible for all administrative actions of the county and all employees. If anything goes wrong, no matter how trivial, it's ultimately the county administrator's responsibility. Given how the county board has interpreted the previous clause, this clause would probably make members afraid to mention any problem in open session, lest it be taken as an implicit criticism. It's essentially a gag order that forces board members to act like Pollyanna in public. I sincerely doubt that Deb Busey needs this clause for her own protection. She's extremely competent, proactive, and able to explain her decisions. She can handle herself perfectly well in open session. It's the county board that needs the courage to discuss their actions or inactions in open session. Hiding behind the guise of protecting the reputation of an employee is both wimpy and dishonest, and the public is catching on to this game. If the county board is serious about accountability and open government, then this clause needs to be removed. The public understands perfectly well that problems arise in any organization. We don't expect a Pollyanna-ish utopia. What we want is government that catches problems early, discusses them openly and honestly, and then genuinely tries to solve them. The reputations of board members should hinge on openness, rather than on sweeping problems under the rug or making employees take the rap. Now is the time to display courage. Remove this clause so that board members feel they can openly discuss problems without risking legal action. Thank you.
Mr. Dwayne Northrup.
Good evening. I think you might have the sheet by now. I come in tonight, I apologize, I got an email from Deb today, but I didn't get it in time to respond. I would planned on coming here tonight and dropping off a copy of that letter from DHS regarding public aid funerals. I don't know how many of you heard about that. I know Greg Knott raised a question earlier today about it. I just want to let you know it does concern me, and it should concern the board greatly, in my opinion. We tend to handle in the past 1 to 2 cases a year. And for those of you in the audience who don't know, DHS or the state has come out and said they're not going to pay or reimburse for public aid funerals this next fiscal year. The way that works normally, just so you know, is they don't pay that up front anyway. It's just like most other state bills. Somebody else has to cover that expense up front, and then they have to apply to get reimbursed for that. There's also a limit. I think the total limit is about $1,644, which by those standards, not many funerals can be handled for that cost anymore, and many cremations can't be handled for that cost. So I wanted to bring that to your attention because I truly believe we're going to see a huge increase in indigent cases that would have normally fallen under public aid in the past. Many funeral homes would have taken those cases and worked it out with the families, but as I stated before, this year already we've handled 5 to 6 when we normally handle 1 to 2, and I think that number is going to rise just because this letter came out to all the funeral directors and all the cemeteries notifying them the state's not going to pay. And in the past, it's taken 6 months to a year for them, just like other bills that are submitted to the state, to pay, which has caused some of our funeral homes not to accept those cases at all. And I think that's going to be the case now, is we're going to see more and more of those cases, and unfortunately, according to the law and how things work, that's going to fall back to the county in most of those cases. So I wanted to bring that to your attention, just so you would be aware of it. I can't give you any solid numbers. I think Deb had some numbers on our old cases, but I do believe we're going to see an increase in that. I can tell you right now I've got one case right now that's sitting there in the coroner's office waiting for us to handle that's not even counted in the numbers that I've given you. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. I also wanted to just touch briefly, last week, I believe it was, I gave a presentation to some of the committee members about the coroner's office and so forth, and there were some questions about my budget and the request to cut budgets for next fiscal year by 6%. And I had mentioned during that presentation that even though the county board comes to the department heads and asks the department heads to cut their budgets when it's necessary, we don't have control over all those expenses that we incur. And I just got a notice this week that my autopsy fees are going up by approximately $50 a case. And just using old numbers, that's approximately a $7,000 increase I will see next year on autopsies. So while I'm having to cut my budget or try and cut my budget by that 6%, I'm also going to have to swallow or somehow come up with that extra $7,000 roughly, depending on how many cases we hold. So I wanted to bring that to your attention also as we get into the budget talks and figuring our budgets for next year. And that's all I had for tonight, unless there's some questions about the funerals or that. Thank you.
Is there further public participation? See none, we'll close that. Announcements and communications. Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you. A very important event took place today. At 12:15 p.m. at Carl Foundation Hospital, Lawson Murphy Kurtz was born, weighing in at 8 pounds, 6 ounces, 22 inches long, with a full head of hair. His father, Andy, and mother, Jessie, are doing well, and his grandfather, Alan, and grandmother, Linda, are doing great. Thank you.
Congratulations. Ms. Anderson.
I placed a flyer on each of your desks that tells about the community rally on Saturday that is being sponsored by, I'm coming blank. Well, the United Way is what I'm trying to think. But really, all of the human service agencies are interested in the rally. And while your grandchild was being born, I was at the rally today at noontime at DSC, where the governor came, and that is a huge building. I am not good at estimating crowds, but there had to be at least 500 people there, if not more. I could hardly get in the door, and that's the big work area that DSC has. But it's about the budget. If the budget as being proposed, the cuts that the human service agencies, not only in our community but around the state, if they hold up, it will be devastating. We had our mental health board meeting on Tuesday. They talk about the 50% cut, but in a number of the agencies, like Prairie Center, for instance, their cuts would be 75%. So for a lot of agencies, small agencies particularly, it may be that they fold. And for agencies like DSC, they probably wouldn't fold, but the bulk of their programs would be cut. And we're talking about hundreds of people in our community that will be affected. DSC estimates that that would affect at least 600 of clients in the various programs. So I urge you, if you can't come to the rally, contact your legislators, let them know that we need these service agencies. It's not going to save money. People are going to lose jobs, thousands of jobs. Families are going to be devastated when they lose the services, and it may be that they would have to quit their jobs in order to take care of those family members. So I ask you just to look at it and take it seriously.
Mr. Langenheim. Microphone, please.
Jan, do you have any idea how much this shortfall is likely to be transferred to our responsibility, if any?
We're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and I think all of us in this room know that we don't have that kind of money. And this is a state responsibility, and it's not only the cuts this year, but over the last 10 years, most of these agencies have not seen much of a rise in what they've been receiving from the state. So they're working right now at being stretched to maintain the programs that they have. So I think it just affects our whole community, and we ought to care.
Mr. Nudo.
A very short nursing home report. I believe April will show a slight loss somewhere in the vicinity of $6,000 for the month. More concerning is the fact that our resident number is somewhere in the vicinity of 183 due to a lowering of elective surgeries at the hospitals, which lowers our rehab section, and also the fact that we were, for the better part of 2 weeks, prohibited from having admissions for Medicare and Medicaid patients due to a snafu between the state and the feds. It was cleared up as quickly as it could have been, and we're monitoring that very closely.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Ms. Wysocki.
I'm speaking on behalf of Brendan McGinty, who is not here tonight, and in his capacity as finance chair, Brendan would be, if he were here, would make the announcement that for the last 2 years, Champaign County has been fortunate enough to receive a Distinguished Budget Presentation Award from the Government Finance Officers Association, or lovingly known as GFOA. This month we received notification that Champaign County has received this distinction for the 3rd straight year. So that the county receives a Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for following a budget procedure that falls into 4 categories as they would outline it. It also means that Deb Busey receives a certificate of recognition for budget presentation. And since we are very fortunate to have Ms. Busey on staff, I think this is worth some public announcement.
Thank you, Ms. Wysocki. Other announcements? I just want to point out that on your desk you have a letter from Jay Schweigart, Mayor. It was mailed to the county clerk, so for that reason it was delivered to you today. It's just a matter of procedure, so take it as an FYI. That news is old news to all of you. And also I want to point out that Mr. Gladney and Mr. McGinty did inform me they would not be at this meeting. They have some personal matters to take care of. Okay, consent agenda. Mr. Smucker.
I'd like to take 2 items off the consent agenda.
Okay. Those items are?
Ordinance number 851 and ordinance number 852.
Did you say what committee and the number?
I'm sorry, Policy Personnel Committee, and then ordinance 851.
12 and 13?
And ordinance 852. 12 and 13, right?
Okay, so policy 12 and 13. Ms. Wysocki.
Also from Policy Personnel, I'd like to ask that item 4 be removed.
Item 4?
Yes.
Thank you. 4, correct. Any other items? Mr. Beckett.
I move the consent agenda.
Moved by Mr. Beckett.
Second.
Second by Mr. James. Roll call.
Dennett's.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yeah.
James.
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Knott.
Yes.
Kurtz.
Yes.
Langenheim.
Yes.
Nudo.
Yes.
O'Connor.
Yes.
Richards.
Yes.
Rosales.
Yes.
Sapp.
Yes.
Schrader.
Yes.
Smucker.
Yes.
Wysocki.
Yes.
Ammons.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Beckett.
Yes.
Benzel.
Yes.
Betts.
Yes.
Cowart.
Yes.
And Weibel.
Yes, motion carries. Committee reports, Justice and Social Services. Ms. Anderson.
Justice and Social Services did not have any action items this month, so there's nothing else.
Thank you. County Facilities. Mr. Beckett.
Thank you. Facilities recommends adoption, strike that. I recommend adoption of resolution number 7028 appropriating $12,361 from from the Champaign County Nursing Home Construction Fund for invoice 12326 from Ratterman Group Limited, and I so move.
Second.
Second by Mr. Betts. Discussion. Mr. Beckett.
I want to indicate to the board that this actually is the final payment of the Ratterman air monitoring contract that is in place as a result of the construction problems at the Champaign County Nursing Home. And while we are contractually obligated to pay this money, it has been our practice in the past to have this item, this contractual payment, first be presented to the Facilities Committee meeting where it would be acted on and then be reported to the board. And I asked Mr. Inman to ask Chair Weibel to put it directly on the board agenda tonight, since it is the final payment of this contract. Payment of this contract will provide for air monitoring through the end of this year.
Further discussion. Mr. James.
Is Mr. Beckett saying that after the end of this year, we no longer have to monitor the air over there?
I'm saying we no longer have a contract with Ratterman for air monitoring at the Champaign County Nursing Home that where we are contractually obligated to pay them money.
Well, then let me rephrase my question. Do we still have to monitor the air?
That is a decision that we have to make. We're not required. There's no legal requirement that we do that. If we choose to do that, that's something that we can decide to do.
Thank you.
Further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Facilities recommends adoption of resolution number 7029, approving an agreement between the County of Champaign and the Urbana Park District for the installation of a water line, and I so move.
Second by Ms. Cowart. Discussion. Mr. Beckett.
At your desk tonight, I thought I saw the final letter from Mr. Inman, or draft after Mr. Inman's input, that is dated May 11th, 2009, and this reflects the letter agreement between the Urbana Park District and Champaign County regarding this water line. The cost of this water line is bore by the Urbana Park District. The maintenance obligation for this water line is Urbana Park District. We will have county officials available to screen the work and to assure that county policies are followed in the construction of this project.
Further discussion. Mr. James.
I just wanted to point out that one of the things that Denny was good to get done for us was that instead of a 1-year repair limit, we went to a 5-year. So I want to tell him thanks.
Further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
The only other matter that I want to call to your attention is the memo at your desk, and I wanted to inform the public because there may have been working on this stuff and I turn it all around. Again, this is from Mr. Inman, and this gives you the board information regarding 3 bricks that fell in an interior masonry wall at Champaign County Courthouse construction project yesterday. Engineers have been at the site yesterday and today to determine that it was only one spot. It was only 3 bricks. There is corrective action that can be taken in place, and so it isn't like there are major structural problems at the courthouse. I want to make sure that the public's aware of that, and of course, Mr. Inman's memo will be public record.
Thank you, Mr. Beckett.
That's all.
Thank you. Policy Personnel, Mr. Betts.
I move adoption of ordinance number 849, imposing a retailer occupation tax and a service occupation tax at a rate of 1% in the County of Champaign, Illinois, to be used exclusively for school facilities purposes, and I so move.
Second by Ms. Cowart. Oh, sorry, Ms. Ammons.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. James.
I'd like to make a motion to set that tax at 0.25%.
So you want to amend the motion?
Amend the motion to set the tax at 0.25%.
Okay, moved by Mr. James, second by Mr. Hunt. Discussion on the amendment. Mr. Betts.
I'd like to speak in opposition to the amendment. It is fairly well known that I am not an enthusiastic supporter of sales taxes. I think they're regressive, they're backward, among other criticisms. However, we put this on the ballot in November, and it failed in November. It was a very close election. A massive number of folks voted. It was then put on the ballot this spring. Far fewer folks voted. It was dramatically fewer. However, it passed. And those votes need to count. And the ballot proposition said at 1%. It didn't say at 0.25%. It said at 1%. It was promoted as 1%. I don't think anyone on this board had any illusions that it was not going to be 1%. I think the voters knew it was going to be 1%. I think it would be a very serious act of betrayal of the outcome of that election, despite the fact that fewer people voted. You have to show up to be counted, and the people who showed up were counted. I think it would be a terrible, terrible mistake for this board to reduce that amount and to try to second-guess the needs of the school districts. We were not elected to the school boards. We were elected to the county board, and I think we have to recognize that the school boards know what their building needs are, know what their financial needs are, and I think we need to respect how this was promoted and how it was voted on, despite the fact that many of us in this room undoubtedly voted against it. I think we have to honor what the voters did in this situation and not try to lower the percent.
Mr. James.
Well, what Tom says has merit as a lot of things I hear in here every night, but there's a lot of agencies having to cut budgets. There's a lot of my friends and coworkers that are out of jobs. Every tax we add just keeps going on and on. I'm just saying we need to look at it. It's a tough time out there right now. I agree there's merit to what's being said, but just because the voters, the number of voters that voted yes, as Tom said, came out, my constituents call me and tell me that they don't want it at all. So I'm looking for a compromise. And again, I stress there's a lot of people that are looking for work. We're hearing tonight about budget cuts across the board. We're looking at items for our employees and our staff and our department heads. We need to be frugal, and I agree, Tom's right. The school board knows what they need, and I'll agree with that. But this board has the authority, and the way it was presented in the beginning, and there's been mass confusion about this from day one, it started out as a 1/4 cent up to 1%, just like other things that start out. And I just think that they can always come back and ask for more if the need is there. But now is the wrong time to send a message to people that are out there hurting that we're going to raise their taxes.
Mr. Betts?
I agree with much of what my colleague said. I think it was confusing throughout much of the process. But the one thing that I think was consistent in both elections was the word 1%. I heard that over and over and over again. Saw it on the signs. I agree with you that we're in a recession. It's the worst recession that we've had in definitely my lifetime and probably much further back. However, I also see benefits in a recession to a building program. People get to go to work when we build schools, when we improve the conditions at schools all over this county. There are going to be many, many jobs created in the labor and the construction. So I see some real positives in terms of this money. It's going to be a lot of money that's raised. Do I think it impacts retail and shopping? For sure. Normally, in a time of recession, you would not normally raise sales taxes. That is not a normal thing to do. But voters in this county decided that they were going to do it. They made that decision, and I really think we need to honor that 1% decision, despite our own personal misgivings. And I have them, but I am absolutely willing to support 1%, and I oppose the 1/4 cent.
Mr. James.
Follow up to Tom's comment about the buildings and possibly bringing other things into town. Apparently, I read the News Gazette, and I see that there's a lot of development shutting down because nobody's coming. And those buildings are setting. All they're going to do is deteriorate, cause crime, what have you. I think in this time, we all need to tighten our belts, bite the bullet a little bit, and help each other out. Spending more money at this time is not going to solve the problems that Tom is addressing.
Mr. Nudo.
Just a point of order. We've got two great orators here, Mr. Betts, Mr. James, but may I suggest that the chair and the parliamentarian require that each speaker speak once to an issue, that those speakers who speak keep their notes and make their points instead of having rebuttals. I think, we get into back and forth, and I don't think it's productive that we take this kind of time. And I think it's up to the chair to call on others, and if there are no others, then they can speak. That is the rule of order, is it?
Point noted, Mr. Nudo. The thing was that nobody else raised their hand, so I thought I'd let it go for a little while. Is there any other discussion? Mr. Langenheim. And remember, this is on a motion to amend.
No. I'm talking about the motion to amend.
Right, correct.
There's no question that what the public schools are notoriously underfunded and have been for a long, long time. We did get this referendum passed. It perhaps is not the tax that all of us would want. Some of us would prefer to have an income tax. Some of us do not consider the property tax to be particularly onerous compared to a sales tax, but it has been passed, and it ill behooves this board to gut the provision made in that referendum. To cut it by 3/4 is really very presumptuous.
Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you. I'll be honest with you. I'm not happy with raising taxes at this point. With what's happening across the country, people out of work. And had this not been a referendum that was voted upon and it had fallen directly to the board to make a decision, I very well might have followed Mr. James's suggestion of a 1/4%. The key here is we were directed by our constituents, by the voters. Yes, it was less than the no's in the last election and the last referendum, but it's who comes out and who votes. And the vote was a majority for, and as I read the ballot myself, I assumed there was nothing less than 1% that we were voting for. And since that is true, I have to vote against this amendment and vote for the 1% because we're directed to by our constituents and we represent them, and hopefully in the best manner that we can.
Ms. Anderson.
I didn't hear from lots of people, but a number of people did encourage me to support the 1%. I had received one email late today that pointed out the differences in the two votes from the first time and the second time, and that there were less people voting on it. But I do think that after it failed at the first time, that there was a concerted effort throughout the county. Most of the effort in the first election was within the cities. And I think that really some of the schools out in the rural areas, and on second thought, realized that they would probably benefit from this 1% even more. Even though I represent a Champaign area, I really think that it's going to benefit the rural areas even more. And I am opposed to this amendment. I think that we have to honor, and probably the no votes, I guess I wanted to say, didn't come out because some of them had received this education and realized a little bit more what they were voting on.
Ms. Wasaki.
Can someone in the room tell me when this shift would take place?
January 1st.
January? Oh, okay.
All on the amendment.
Any further discussion? I think Mr. Benzel.
Excuse me. I just need it noted on the record that I'm going to need to abstain on these votes based on the advice of the state's attorney for a business conflict of interest.
Thank you, Mr. Benzel. Okay, roll call. This is on the amendment to the main motion.
Dennett.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Knott.
Yes.
Kurtz,
No.
Langenheim,
No.
Nudo,
No.
O'Connor,
No.
Richards,
No.
Rosales,
No.
Sapp,
Yes.
Schrader,
No.
Smucker,
No.
Wysocki,
No.
Ammons,
No.
Anderson,
No.
Beckett,
No.
Benzel, sorry, abstains, Betts,
No.
Cowart,
No.
and Weibel.
No. Motion fails. We're back to the main motion. Mr. Knott?
I do plan to support the 1 cent at this point. I thought that vote was important to, one, for the discussion purposes that, everybody brought some really good points up. I guess ultimately the voters did approve it. I think we had to do due diligence and look at the lower rate and see where our board felt on it. So I think that was a good vote for really to see where we were. On the bigger picture, I think Al Nudo deserves a ton of credit for the work he's done with Jane Quinlan and that Pius did with the school boards and the superintendents to have a full understanding of, at least as of today, of the way the monies will be used for new facilities or tax relief or whatever the case might be. And Al, you did yeoman's work way above the call of duty to get that done. I know, I'm sure some of the folks in the school community were a little agitated at the county board, but you just got to understand that's just the way we do business up here, unfortunately, at times. But I think because this is probably going to be a lifetime tax, as somebody at the Rantoul School Board pointed out in a newspaper clipping I've got here from yesterday, it said, this was Member Noble. She reminded the school board members that the county board cannot reduce or eliminate the sales tax as long as a single school district is relying on the revenue to repay the bonds. So that's why I think we had to do our due diligence, one, to examine the various rates tonight, but also, more importantly, I think the work that Alan Pius did to ask the schools to go on record as to what they'll do. Will that last forever? Probably not, because our own track record on this board says we didn't live up to our own word when we passed the quarter-cent safety sales tax a dozen or 12 years ago. But I do give a lot of credit to the superintendents and the school boards for, working with us in this effort. So I am going to support the main motion.
Mr. James?
I just want to make a correction to what Greg just said. That wasn't a school board member that said that. That was the consulting firm that put together that report.
I apologize.
I just wanted it on the record.
Mr. Newell, do you want to give an update on what the school boards have said since the policy meeting?
Sure. Thanks to Jane Quinlan for compiling the information that the policy committee had requested as far as word differentiations in the report that she put together for us to look at. And I want to say I've got the information. I move that we put that information into our into this meeting. How do I place it into the minutes? Yeah, thank you. But they have all responded in a positive way. I know that there was some agitation and some consternation about having to do that, but this thing goes on forever, and I do feel that it is our job to make sure what was promised to the voters is kept. And I feel very confident that the school districts did do what they say they were going to do. The other part of the equation is that I personally will continue to work with legislators here locally at the state level and the General Assembly to reintroduce the changes in this law, which I think is flawed because it does not have a sunset. It does not have requirements for automatic bond reductions on school construction funds that are out there to abate property taxes initially. That's what's in Iowa, and we all know that. And the final thing is to not allow a bureaucrat in Springfield to withhold school construction funds that are available just because a county passes this. So I really believe that even though this county won't benefit initially, I'm hopeful that the legislation that we request be placed in the General Assembly will require this on future bond placements here in this county and all other counties in the state.
Thank you, Mr. Nudo. Further discussion. Mr. Kurtz.
If we look closely at the ordinance 849, page 21, section 3, it clearly defines what takes place with this ordinance and where the 1% goes. Looking at this, it seems to reiterate all the things that we've heard here in public participation. And I feel that here it is in writing, which makes it better than even a verbal commitment, that once we pass this in writing, and that this is where the money will go for these expenditures. And so I will vote for the 1%.
Well, can I request a roll call?
We will have a roll call. Further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Dennett.
Yes.
Hunt.
No.
James.
No.
Jay.
Yes.
Jones.
No.
Knott.
Yes.
Kurtz.
Yes.
Langenheim.
Yes.
Nudo.
Yes?
O'Connor.
Absolutely.
Richards.
Yes.
Rosales.
Yes.
Sapp.
No.
Schrader.
Yes.
Smucker.
Yes.
Wysocki.
Yes.
Ammons. Anderson.
Yes.
Beckett.
Yes.
Betts.
Yes.
Cowart.
Yes.
And Weibel.
Yes. Motion carries.
Let me wait a minute for them to leave.
Wait.
While I'm waiting, can I ask something? I have done as off the agenda number 851 and number 852 and item 4. Okay. May I proceed?
Go ahead, Mr. Betts.
I move adoption of resolution number 7004, approving the employment agreement for Champaign County Administrator Deb Busey. So moved.
Second by Mr. Knott. Discussion. Mr. Sapp.
Throughout the process, as we've discussed going from 2 administrators to 1 administrator, I've asked questions as far as the job responsibilities of the position that was being eliminated, specifically that one that oversaw facilities, trying to get some indication. I would ask if Ms. Busey could address that this evening and give us an indication if she has an idea on where we're headed and what might transpire now over the period of time until that occurs.
Currently, we have the county administrator of facilities and procurement, and that position will not exist any longer. Other 2 positions we have that oversee facilities are both in the physical plant. There's a supervisor of grounds maintenance and a supervisor of building maintenance. I believe the appropriate structure for the physical plant department is to have a facilities director position and a supervisor for all maintenance workers, both grounds and buildings, serving under one supervisor. That is basically how I see us proceeding. We have developed job descriptions for those 2 new positions, and they will be going through the process of being evaluated and classified by the Job Evaluation Committee. And moving to that system, I believe the facilities director will be required to, we are completing a decade of building new buildings. We have a strong need to document what these buildings' needs are in terms of being maintained and in terms of systems within the buildings being replaced on a timely manner, and us developing a methodology for budgeting for those things. And I believe that for the facilities director, that will be his prior area of responsibility for at least the first 12 months, if not a little longer, to make sure that we have provided that information for you, the board, to be able to develop a good capital improvement plan for all of the facilities that you now own.
Go ahead, Mr. Sapp.
If I can follow up, thank you. And then I guess I also would be interested in knowing if we have any preliminary ideas of, obviously, we have a second administrator now, and we have these 2 supervisors position. with that administrator's position open, are we going to, I've always said we need to do this better than neutral. Can you give us kind of an idea of what we might look for next fiscal year, should this plan go through?
Just these changes that I've just described. I anticipate that the total salary savings for the general fund are in the vicinity of about $67,000, and the total savings, when you consider both salary and fringe benefits, should be about $85,500.
One last thing then, I just would like to comment then myself that, again, I appreciate your efforts on that. I know I've asked you several times for that, and I know you were working on it, and I appreciate you looking into that and providing information, and makes my decision to support this easy now. Thank you.
Ms. Ammons.
Follow up quickly with those cost savings that you just stated. Is that enough to cover the two positions that you're speaking to?
Yes, that is the entire transition, eliminating the county administrator of facilities and procurement, eliminating the two current supervisor positions, and creating two new positions, facilities director and supervisor of grounds and maintenance and facilities.
Further discussion. Ms. Ammons, do you have? Okay, Mr. Betts.
I just wanted to address the issue of public criticism that was raised by the public. I don't think that it is accurate to say that county board members cannot comment concerning administrators. We can ask them questions. We can do all sorts of things. What we cannot do under this contract, and none of us would want to endure this, is do a job performance, a job evaluation in public. We do not do that for any of our other employees. That is just common courtesy. I personally have never felt stifled with either Ms. Busey or Mr. Inman about asking them questions in public, whether it would concern facilities over the nursing home, over the courthouse, over the budget, over personnel matters. I've never felt in any way, shape, or form intimidated or afraid that I was going to be taken to court by either one of them. I don't think, I can't speak for everyone on the board, but I would be very surprised if people ever felt that they had been intimidated because of this clause about asking questions concerning various issues. Now, sometimes we are intimidated because there's pending litigation, and it is not in the county's fiduciary interest to comment on matters that are in litigation, because there's by definition litigation, and it's not good for us to comment in public about things that are in negotiation. But in terms of asking the administrators questions, I've never felt intimidated by that, and I don't think too many people have.
Ms. Ammons.
I did want to address that issue that was raised in public participation. When I joined this board, we had entered into a very difficult period with the nursing home. And questions, I have to certainly have a different position than Mr. Betts. Questions pertaining specifically to the work at that point of the nursing home administrator was stifled, in my opinion, strongly based on this statement, this very statement. And it was not performing job evaluation. It was specifically asking questions about the performance of a specific entity in the nursing home. And that was a very difficult time because people were not able to say there was a problem because we couldn't address the fact that the administrator was part of that situation over there. And we couldn't express it publicly, even though the public was expressing it. And so I think that there is certainly some problems with regard to the wording of this, and I certainly would not support it if it in any way prohibits us from doing what we were elected to do by our electorate. And I do want to also point out in this statement, this final part that was brought up before, of a corrective action against a board member. Is that what we're suggesting in this last part, corrective action against a board member?
I believe that's corrective action to correct the problem.
I think the wording really throws me off.
Mr. Thorne, would you?
I apologize, I don't have the policy directly in front of me, but I believe that's intended to allow the, just for purposes of explanation, any damage to, in this case, Ms. Busey's reputation, she'd be entitled to a public hearing on the allegations, or whatever it was that was made public, which she's grieving.
I think it's so broad, I can come up with some things of which I won't, that could be problematic in this language. And I definitely could not support it.
That particular clause simply speaks to the fact that there is a grievance procedure in your personnel policy and indicates that this employee has the same right to that. That procedure, by virtue of how it's defined in the personnel policy, gives an employee the right to request corrective action and to be made whole through a process. It doesn't guarantee that it will occur, and the process is defined in the policy as to what steps are taken to go through.
Please.
Then my follow-up would be the Section 2, Part A, describes the relationship between the administrator and the county board as at will. How does that fit into a grievance policy that is for for employees that are not at will? I'm just trying to clarify that.
I can tell you.
At will essentially means that anything that at will means essentially you can let the person go. Correct. Now, you have an at-will employee, they may have certain rights to which they're entitled, namely a paycheck, other benefits that come along. My recollection, again, I don't have the policy in front of me, is this is a name clearing hearing. And what I believe is envisioned there is if there's any damage to the employee's reputation, and again, I'm using that word to explain it in non-legal terms, this person could have a hearing to address the statements that were made publicly that were damaging to the employee's reputation. So the person can still be discharged whenever you so choose. At will essentially concerns the issue of whether or not you can fire them with cause or for any reason. Did I answer your question? That's...
Mr. Richards.
Do we have any other employees with the county besides our two current administrators who have Clause 5C in their contracts or anything relating to their employment?
You have specific contracts only with the county engineer at this point, and I'm sorry, I can't tell you what his contract says right now.
Mr. Betts.
Most of our other contracts, since they follow the county's personnel policies, we do not discipline, correct, or evaluate any of our employees in a public session.
Mr. Nudo.
And that, to me, is the key statement Mr. Betts just made. I feel very strongly about that closed sessions are for those kinds of things, and the employee does have rights which a public participation person does not have to adhere to, but we do, and we run the risk of a lawsuit against us.
Mr. Langenheim, did you have a comment?
Distinction between criticism and questioning is a matter of how it is taken, and I'm sure that it would be possible to take either side in a specific instance. We had a lot of that during several of our previous concerns with employees, Mr. Diedrich, for example, and I just think you're going to have to live with that.
Further discussion. Mr. Richards.
This section has been used to stifle debate before. I move to amend Ordinance 7004 by deleting Section 5C, starting with public comment regarding the employee's performance and continuing to the end of the section. I think that we need to go on record with the public about whether we support this section.
Is there a second? Second by Ms. Amons. Discussion. Mr. Richards.
And I'm also willing to have the section amended also. I'd really just like us to discuss this.
We're actually, this discussion is limited to removing it, okay, unless there's amendment. Yeah, let's go with that. Mr. Betts.
I'm having a bit of a problem with the idea that we are now publicly negotiating a contract, which we should not do. We set up a committee with a Republican and a Democrat on it to negotiate this with Ms. Busey. This board granted them authority to negotiate a contract. Now we're coming back to the full board and negotiating it in public. I think it is extremely inappropriate for one side to pick and various things they want or don't want that should have been expressed to the members of that negotiating committee who had the authority to act on behalf of the board. I think this is inappropriate. I believe that the chair should could, if he so choose, rule this out of order.
I would like to just move ahead and have a vote on it.
You're the chair.
Vote on what?
Vote on the amendment to cut that.
To strike?
Public comment from section 5C, starting with the words public comment regarding employees' performance to the end of that paragraph. I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Are you ready for that vote right now?
Yes.
Okay. Dennett.
No.
Hunt.
No.
James.
No.
Jay.
No.
Jones.
No.
Knott.
No.
Kurtz.
No.
Langenheim.
Yes.
Nudo.
No.
O'Connor.
No.
Richards.
Yes.
Rosales. No. Sapp.
No.
Schrader.
No.
Smucker.
No.
Wysocki.
No.
Ammons.
Yes.
Anderson.
No.
Beckett.
No.
Benzel.
No.
Betts.
No.
Cowart.
Yes.
And the chairman.
No. Motion fails. Back to the main motion. Ms. Ammons.
My question is that this document, is this document already public if it's in the packet? It's in the packet. So what my question is actually not rhetorical. The fact that it's in the document and we have to vote on it and it is made public means that we can make recommendations for changes to it. And so to suggest that because it went to a subcommittee that we should not make any suggestions or changes at this point, if something is brought to our attention, ruling that out of order, I don't find it to be.
I did not rule it out of order.
You did not rule it out of order, but suggesting that it is. I think it's a public document. The discussion has been made, and it should be open for discussion.
Mr. Betts.
You didn't rule it out of order. I have a long-term problem, and I fear this problem happening in matters of labor negotiations when you set up a labor committee to negotiate a contract. And having gone through this for many, many years, being on these committees, you come back with labor agreements that are imperfect. They are inherently compromising and have problems in it. I do not want to establish the idea that when a contract comes back where we've granted authority to folks, that we then start changing the terms at full board of those contracts. Now, in the labor context, I believe you'd be violating the State Labor Act straight up if you did it, although I've seen it tried. I don't think it violates any labor relations law here. I think it violates good county board process and procedure to invest a committee with authority to negotiate a contract and then have the full board try to renegotiate it. If that's what you want to do to renegotiate it, then I think it should be sent back to the committee to renegotiate. But I don't think we should pick each section apart.
Mr. Langenheim.
I'd like to ask Mr. Betts a question. If the full board balks at that contract, what route should they take to get it changed?
In which context? This context, or a labor context? In a labor context, I think you're violating the Labor Relations Act. In this context, it would be a constituted decision that you're not going to have this contract and not going to hire this individual, or you're going to send it back to that committee to renegotiate.
Send it back to the committee. And if the committee refuses to change its mind, what recourse does the full board have?
The full board can turn it down.
That's right. But can the full board discuss it in the process of turning it down?
You're ruling not mine.
Pardon? Well, we've been doing that. We've been doing that.
Yes, we have.
Further discussion? Mr. J.
Call the question.
Is there a second?
Second.
Show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. That's 2/3 majority. We'll have a roll call vote, please, on the main motion.
Dennett,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Knott,
Yes.
Kurtz,
Yes.
Langenheim,
Yes.
Nudo,
Yes.
O'Connor,
Yes.
Richards,
No.
Rosales,
Yes.
Sapp,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Smucker,
Yes.
Wysocki,
Yes.
Ammons,
No.
Anderson,
Yes.
Beckett,
Yes.
Benzel,
Yes.
Betts,
Yes.
Cowart, and Mr. Chair.
Yes, motion carries.
The items taken from consent on your yellow sheet. Item number 4, I move adoption of Resolution 7008, appointing Michael Smith to the Board for the Care and Treatment of Persons with a Developmental Disability for a term ending June 30th, 2012, and I so move.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schrader. Discussion. Ms. Wysocki.
I ask that that be removed because I have a professional relationship with Mr. Smith and will be abstaining.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? No opposed, 1 abstain. Motion carries.
Now to, I believe, item
13.
I think it was
Right.
12.
Oh,
I move adoption of resolution number 851, amending ordinance 837, establishing single administrator system and prescribing the duties and powers and responsibilities of the county administrator, and I so move.
Second.
second by Mr. Knott. Mr. Smucker.
I actually just want a clarification on this. In the section 3B personnel.
What page are you on, Mr. Smucker?
I'm sorry, I'm on page 66. We are doing, this is number 851, correct? That's what we're
Yes.
working on. I just want to be clarified that this section is referring to or in another way describing section 4-2 on page 76 in the policy. It refers to the policy. I'm just trying to make sure that we're talking, this is two ways of talking about the same process. That's all. Is that correct? I just want to make sure that we're not talking about different department heads, we're talking about the same group of people there. Okay. And in that case, I offer my support for this ordinance.
Further discussion? See no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
That's next one.
Next one, Mr. Noodle. Motion carries. Mr. Betts.
Okay, and the next matter, I move adoption of ordinance number 852, amending ordinance number 779 of the Champaign County Personnel Policy, and I so move.
Second.
Second by Mr. James.
And before
Mr. Betts.
before the committee, you will see a sheet that is yellow and blue, and I would consider that a friendly amendment if my seconder would consider it second to clarify.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Is there any, I assume we have consent to that? We do.
And I would ask Ms. Busey briefly to state the purpose of that. We discussed it briefly this morning.
This just is a better defining statement of the selection committee process when a department head is being hired. It wasn't very clearly stated in the first draft, which was with your agenda. If you start with the word alternatively, which is stricken, that sentence was what you previously had, and then following the blue is the replacement sentence to define the selection committee.
Mr. Smucker?
And then I would like to, are we finished talking about this then? Yeah. So I'd like to make an amendment to this, to the motion. And
No, go ahead.
okay. It's actually quite simple, so, and then I'd like to speak to it once I'm done. But on page 72, after county board, after county administrator, to insert the words in consultation with the county board chair.
Where on?
On page, I'm sorry, page 72, at the bottom, there's one change on the page.
Under new hire?
Under new hire.
Okay.
There's one change on the page. After the bold administrator, insert in consultation with the county board chair.
Is that a motion?
This is
It's
a
amended.
motion to amend.
Motion to amend.
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Langenheim.
But I actually have a couple of other small changes that are.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and make,
Can we take them as a group? They're, in fact,
Take 'em-
are almost exactly the same.
Go ahead.
thing. So I feel like if people
Go ahead,
aren't going
Mr.
to agree
Slavin.
to one, they aren't going to agree to all of them. So in the next, on the next page, in the exact same place, after administrator, enter the exact same phrase, in consultation with the county board chair.
that's on page 73.
73.
Top page 73. And there further?
Yes, and then on page 79, section 6-2.1. This is under dismissal of appointed department head. And an appointed department head may be given oral written warnings by the county administrator, period. New sentence, the county administrator shall notify the county board chair of said warnings. And one, last one, on page 81. Section 3.4, sorry, down at the bottom. And again, where it says county administrator, after the word administrator, add in consultation with the county board chair. And then I'll speak real briefly to these.
Second the whole mass.
The second agrees with all those changes. Mr. Smucker, go ahead.
We talked about this at caucus a bit, and I actually went back and reread and all the parts I was worried about, and it turns out that a lot of my worries were probably overstated at caucus. But I feel like there's, I fully support this move of taking some of these basic operational duties and putting them in the hands of the administrator. I'm in support of that. I think it's the correct thing to do. The administrator is the one who's knowledgeable about these situations. This is too much minutia for the board to handle. On the other hand, what I want to do is keep the lines of communication open between the administrator and the board. And I think in the cases that we have here, and I'll just go through them real quick, these are, for the most part, they're exceptional cases. They're not going to be routine, but they're the kind of situations that when they arise, a good administrator would probably do this anyway. And so why not just put it in writing? So on page 72 in the first one on the probationary period, this basically is saying if there's going to be, if we've hired somebody new, they've gone through their 6-month probationary period, and for some reason we want to extend that probationary period further because there must be some reason to do that. There's some problem with the employee, that there's some consultation with the board chair before that happens. My guess is this is a very rare occurrence, but it seems like it's worth, it's probably, it could be a hot potato too, and it's worth having an administrator sort of check in with the chair on doing that. The next change in the next paragraph is practically the same situation. This is an internal hire, and it's an extension of the probationary period. The section on page 81 is a case in which there'd be a disciplinary procedure against a, I'm sorry, jumped ahead. Page 79, in the dismissal of a appointed department head is the section. This basically says that if a department head is going to get an oral or written warning by the administrator, that after the administrator would do that, that the administrator would then notify the board chair that that's been done. So that, again, that there's a level of communication between them. And then in the final one on page 81, again, this is on recommended disciplinary procedures against a department head that essentially the county administrator would check in with the board chair before proceeding with something like that. In all of these cases, I do not envision the authority to change. In other words, it is the county administrator's decision in the end to discipline or not discipline, extend the probation or not extend the probation. I just think it's worthwhile having in writing the idea that the administrator is going to check in with an elected official, and in this case, somebody who's going to have their ear on sort of the political issues that might be involved. So, thank you.
Mr. James?
I'm sort of confused by what Mr. Smucker, I sort of get what he's saying, but in my point, if the administrator has the authority and basically they're just going to go over and give the county board chair a heads up, so to speak, that's fine and dandy, but to put language in there, you're not really, there's no action that person, whoever it may be at the point in time, can do anything. You're just more or less telling them as a conduit. I think as a courtesy, as you said, most professionals are going to do that. They're going to let the person overseeing us or any organization be aware of that. Plus, the employee still has certain rights, as Deb has pointed out, by the employee handbook. I don't think, in my mind, that we need to put that verbiage in there. I think that it's clear cut. I don't think, I know what you're saying, it's just another layer, but we seem to want to always add layers for whatever reason and tie people's hands, and I always say, let's let them do their job, because if they're not doing their job, then it's going to be up to the county board chair to come to us and say, hey, guess what, we got a problem.
Thank you. I oppose the amendments. The purpose of having a county administrator is to professionalize county government. It's to take politics out of it. It's to take the hint of politics out of it. It's to take the appearance of politics out of it. I also know that Pius Weibel, although I respect him, is not the chief executive officer of this board. He doesn't represent me. He doesn't represent my views. He and I disagree all the time. He might say no if Ms. Busey consulted with him, and as Mr. James pointed out, so what? So in the consultation, when Pius Weibel says no, what did that mean? It didn't mean anything. That's what it meant. It meant nothing. Because we've abandoned the professionalization that this contract and now the policies give us by adding this hint of politics, by adding this hint of county board control. The ultimate resolution of the failure of the county administrator to do a job is between the entire county board and the administrator, not between the chair and the administrator, and not between you or not between me, but all of us as a body politic. That's the way it works. You're changing the entire equation. You're giving power the county board chair doesn't have. You're putting political pressure on the administrator, and it's just wrong.
Before it proceeds, Mr. Thorne, I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you give me a definition of in consultation with?
I'd like to know that. I would defer.
I mean, is there a legal definition of that?
As the mover, I
based on
can
your
define.
experience?
I mean, as the mover, that's why I said that there's no shift in authority here.
So it sounds like it'd be a discussion or advice, an exchange of advice, something like that.
Right. I mean, the way I envision it is this is a way to, before you make a pretty important decision, to bounce it off somebody.
Okay. Mr. Benzo, do you have a comment?
I had Mr. Beckett's comment exactly. And,
Okay.
I mean, I listened with an open ear until the last sentence where he threw politics in it, and this needs depoliticized. It just simply can't be in there.
Okay, Mr. Kurtz?
I have to I can't be for this amendment. We're putting trust and our confidence in an administrator. This would undercut that administrator. If that administrator, whoever it is, whether it be in the future, has concerns with a department head or anyone under her supervision, and that person decides, well, I don't want to talk to Deb Busey or the supervisor, I want to go to a county board member, and they just jump around her, forget the chain of command and start coming to us, or someone who is sympathetic to them, and now we have a political situation. And I believe that if we're going to put the authority into one single administrator, that they need the authority to make those decisions without having to look over her shoulder at a board member who might be coming to her to dispute her decisions.
Mr. Nudo?
Just a couple of quick additions. In consultation with infers that the other person being consulted has some influence. And I don't believe that is appropriate by any way, stretch, or form. Secondly, just think of the logistics of new hires, department heads. Mr. Weibel is a part-time chair. Is Deb going to have to go running and calling and determining when to do an evaluation? You know, I just don't see how the logistics would work. And quite frankly, this is micromanaging.
Mr. Langenheim?
I couldn't disagree more with all of this. Politics is not dirty. Politics is not bad. Politics is the means by which the people control their government. It's the means by which they resolve their conflicts. This is a classic example of the stress between the bureaucracy and the policy-making body. And there is nothing here that really invades the prerogatives of the administrator. The administrator is being asked to confer with and to inform the chief policy officer of the county. There's nothing wrong with it. There's good politics and bad politics, but by golly, we are politicians, and that's an honorable profession.
Mr. Jones? Mr.
That was classic. I asked that we call the question,
Mr.
please.
Jones?
Call the question, please.
It's actually out of order. There's people who still haven't had a chance to talk.
Yeah, I would like to make, I agree, Mr. Jones, a couple of people like to say something. I'd like to say something about it if I may. Not everybody has spoken. Mr. Smuck, you already have a couple times. Mr. Betts, would you mind taking over the chair?
Sure. We'll get you salary.
He'll defer that to you.
Go.
Thank you, Mr. Betts. First of all, I want to say that I was not at the Democratic caucus, so I've had no time to think about this until it was brought up at this meeting tonight. So I've been sitting up there sort of cranking away at it. And certainly I think it's good for the administrator to communicate problems like this or situations to the county board chair. It's actually a no-brainer. Thinking about it as a county board chair, my concern is that my actions convey what the county board wants me to do. And this concerns personnel, and I'm not so sure if I can do that. Honestly, I mean, just not having the information. There might be some cases where it's no-brainers, but other cases where maybe I don't really know what would the county board do. I mean, when decisions come to me where I have to make a decision and I don't have the county board vote or a resolution behind me, sometimes I can think, okay, this is what we do. But in cases like this, I don't think I could do that, particularly because it does pertain to personnel. Therefore, I think it's not a good idea.
Let's call the question.
Anybody else want to speak in this who has not spoken so far?
Call the roll.
Okay. Okay, apparently everybody wants to, let's just go to a roll call. On the motion to amend, as Mr. Smucker wants. This is a motion to amend.
Okay.
Dennett?
No.
Hunt?
No.
James?
No.
Jay?
No.
Jones? Knott?
No.
Kurtz?
No.
Langenheim?
Yes.
Nudo?
No.
O'Connor?
No.
Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
No.
Sapp?
No.
Schrader?
No.
Smucker?
Yes.
Wysocki?
No.
Ammons?
No.
Anderson?
No.
Beckett?
No.
Benzel?
No.
Betts?
No.
Cowart?
Yeah.
And Weibel?
No, motion fails. Go back to the main motion. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
There is nothing further from policy.
Thank you, Mr. Betts. Moving on to finance, Mr. Rosales.
I defer that to Barb. I was not
Okay,
at
Ms.
the...
Wysocki?
Yes, I'm going to move the adoption of resolution number 7023 for the approval and, if awarded, acceptance of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act grants for Champaign County facilities, and I so move.
Second.
Second by Mr. Beckett. Ms. Wysocki.
I want to point out to members of the board that at your desk is a rather thick stapled list of proposals that the county has put forward, all in the area of infrastructure, and a number of these have to do with green initiatives. That is, those that save energy and those that are efficient. And basically what we're doing is putting them forward, and should the grants be awarded, we would be more than happy to accept the money for one or more of these programs.
Mr. Richards.
Just wondering if somebody could go into further detail on what exactly the projects are that are increasing our proposed grant request total from the original 1.598 million to the current 3.890 million.
Mr. Inman, could you step up to the mic and answer that question?
Good evening. In response to Mr. Richards' inquiry, if you take a look at the spreadsheet that I provided on landscape here, two things really jacked up the price here on these projects. Number one is if you take a look at the correctional center, number 5, we added additional equipment into that particular project under number, I'm sorry, this is incorrectly labeled. On the following page, number 6, which is currently stated as number 5 under Brookins, solar is added under that project, and that is approximately $1 million. We also added the Emergency Operations Center and ILEAS to it. We wanted to get an all-inclusive picture for the county board to take a look at in the way of energy needs for all our facilities. And to the best of our knowledge, on this particular date, this is exactly what we know that you can do in the way of grant funding to get the energy cost lowered and hopefully stable for a long period of time.
Mr. Inman, thank you for your proactivity on this measure.
Sure.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
I move the adoption of resolution number 7024, which is the payment of claims authorization.
Second by Mr. Beckett. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
And thirdly, I move the adoption of resolution number 7025, which is purchases not following the county's purchasing policy.
Second by Mr. Beckett. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
No other business from finance.
Thank you, Ms. Wysocki. Highway and Transportation, Ms. Cowart.
I move the adoption of resolution number 7030 for the approval and, if awarded, acceptance of the Emergency Repair Program grant for the Champaign County Highway Department.
Second.
Second by Mr. J. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. No other action, Ms. Cowart?
That's all for board action.
Thank you. Environment and Land Use, Ms. Wysocki.
There is nothing from ELUC this month, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there other business? Seeing none. Any new business? Okay, let's go down to, I seek approval of the closed session minutes of April 23rd, 2009 at 6:33.
I move an omnibus motion to approve A, B, C, D, E.
Thank you, Mr. Betts. Second by Mr. Beckett. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Good night.